Small business subcontracting plans, all of the acquisitions that you're going to be involved with in terms of subcontracting opportunities, the government will require that you consider small disadvantaged, women-owned, hub-zone, service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses, and in some cases, historical black colleges and universities as potential sources when you're doing subcontracting. So as a public law requirement, we have an obligation to consider all those types of businesses when we're doing government work. So I'm going to encourage you as you go out and look in the marketplace to figure out what types of subs can help you provide services to the government. Consider all those socioeconomic categories. Flow downs is another process by which the government manages our relationship between us and our subs, in that they're very specific mandatory flow downs that the government mandate we put in our subcontracts. Again, that's another area where our subcontract administrators and buyers know exactly what those flow downs are, and they will make sure that they become a part of our subcontractual documents. And finally, for our discussion today, CPSRs are one of the main tools that the government actually uses to manage our relationships between us and our subcontractors. So we'll talk a little bit about CPSRs in detail. What the purpose of a CPSR is to make sure that we as contractors spend government funds efficiently and effectively. So let's talk a little bit about efficiently and effectively. When the government says efficiently, they want to make sure that we're using the right types of vehicles. They want to make sure that in terms of contractual vehicles, they want to make sure that we're using the right types of flow downs, that we're buying in economic quantities, that we're utilizing all of the tools within our process to ensure that we're not wasting money when we buy things. So efficiency, using P-cards as a part of the transactions if necessary, task orders, those kinds of things can make the process a little bit more efficient, and the government's looking for that. However, effectiveness is what we're going to spend most of our time in this session talking about, and that's really how the government actually ensures that we comply with all the laws, all the regulations, dot all the I's and cross all the T's. I want you to keep in mind this, that when you are requesting that a purchase order or a subcontract be issued under a direct government contract, you are indeed authorizing us to spend government funds. And we therefore have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that we protect the government's interests when we do so. A CPSR also evaluates our compliance with laws, regulations, policies and procedures, and good business practices. So look at it this way. When the folks come in from the government to actually conduct the CPSR, they're doing an audit of our process to ensure that we're not breaking any laws or any requirements that would otherwise put the government at a disadvantage when we put our subcontracts together. Slide 9 talks a little bit about when CPSRs are required. Effectively, if you get, as a government prime contractor, more than $25 million of government contracts in any particular calendar year, you may be subjected to a CPSR. There are some exclusions to the process, one being if you're awarded competitive firm fixed price prime contracts. In addition, any firm fixed price prime contracts with economic price adjustments, as well as any contracts that are issued under commercial item acquisition processes, which are primarily under FAR Part 12, or any GSA schedules, for example. Those are FAR Part 12 type contracts. So if you're issued any of those as a prime, those are not subject to CPSR. However, from a process standpoint, you still need to do all of the compliance requirements that are relative to any other transaction, i.e., you need to be consistent whether you're issuing a request for a PO or a subcontract under a CPSR covered transaction or a non-covered transaction. That's just the way our system works. Also, you can be subject to a CPSR if an administrative contracting officer or a procuring contracting officer or any contracting officer within the government states that it's a requirement for you to go through that CPSR. So There are many triggers that actually cause those CPSRs to happen. We're going to talk a little bit on slide 10 about what those triggers are. For example, if you've gone through CPSRs before, your CPSR history is a big indicator as to whether or not you're going to go through one again. I spoke about the fact that if a PCO or ACO identified you for a potential CPSR, so that that's one of the selection criteria that could happen. Growth, increased sales to the government, those are definitely reasons for the government to launch a CPSR on your organization. And the same happens as well, I should point that out. If you have a drastic decrease in government contracting, that's another trigger for the government to actually have a CPSR on your organization, because a lot of times with decreased sales comes downsizing. And the government wants to make sure that you still are complying with laws and regulations, even though you're losing government sales. If you are going through a pre-award survey or pre-award assessment by the government as a part of a potential prime contract that they plan to award, a CPSR could be a part of that process as well. High visibility projects, major projects. So if you're supporting the war on terror, if you're supporting anything that's going on in the Middle East in terms of those kinds of programs, it's a very high probability that you could be selected for a CPSR. Other audits that take place, whether they're Inspector General audits, whether they are DCAA audits, audits by the GAO, any types of audits that take place, the audit community within the government actually shares audit reports. So if there's a finding from one audit that could impact your purchasing system, it's a high probability that the government will select you for a CPSR. And of course, if you're going through your own internal reviews, there's a high probability that those reviews will actually be turned over to the government because of the government's right to know information about your company. If that happens, it's not uncommon for the government to actually want to come in and do a CPSR based on the fact that you're reviewing your own processes. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I've covered a lot of information. I tried to make it somewhat lively. At the end of the day, you play a vital role in compliance with CPSR requirements. Your buyers and your subcontract administrators, they are there to help you in the process. I encourage you, if you have questions as a result of this presentation, if you have questions as a result of reading the policy and procedure manual, please reach out to them. They are fully aware, they are fully equipped and fully trained to assist you during the procurement process. I thank you for your time and your attention. Have a good day.